The pillows were arranged like a body, not tossed, not clumped the way pillows get when nobody's paying attention. Arranged, shoulder, hip, the soft dip where a head should be. Exactly the shape my mother's body made every night of my life. I was 12. I didn't understand yet that someone had studied her that closely. The front door was locked, bolted from the inside the way she always left it. Her car was gone. Her coat was gone. Her keys, gone too. Nobody could explain how a woman leaves a locked house and drives away in a car the neighbor swore hadn't moved since midnight. I called my aunt first, not the police. I didn't understand yet why that mattered. By noon, there was a woman in our kitchen with a badge and a notebook, asking me questions I didn't have good answers for. Did your mother seem afraid of anyone? Did she have any male friends your father didn't know about? I answered slowly, sensing the question was bigger than it sounded. Detective Renner had a soft voice and hard eyes. She kept touching the pillows on the bed like she expected them to still be warm. They weren't. 2 names came up before dinner. My mother's sister gave the first one, reluctantly, a sergeant from the base 40 minutes out. A man my mother had been seeing since spring, quietly, like something she was ashamed of needing. The second name came from my father's own mouth, offered too quickly, too eagerly, like a man aiming your attention somewhere else. My father had not been home that night. He said he'd been at the ranch alone, the way he'd been since the divorce. I remember thinking, even at 12, that a man doesn't volunteer his ex-wife's boyfriend's name to police within hours of her disappearing unless he's already rehearsed saying it. I didn't say that out loud. I was 12. I wanted my mother back, not a theory. That night I went into her room again, alone, and looked at the shape in the bed. Somebody had folded the top pillow at an angle her head always fell into after midnight. The tired angle, not the awake one. Only 2 living people knew that exact angle. My mother was one. Whoever folded that pillow was the other. They found her car 3 days later at the regional airport, 40 miles from where anyone thought to look, parked neatly between the lines, like someone had taken the time to do it right. The sergeant, Dale, was already there when the deputy called it in. Waiting, he said, for a flight that didn't exist under his name. No ticket, no bag, $30 in his wallet. He failed his first polygraph in under 6 minutes. Meanwhile, my father answered every question calmly, almost helpfully, the way a man does when he's already decided which version of the night he's going to believe himself. He'd been at the ranch, alone. No one to confirm it, and no one asked twice. For a few days, I let myself believe the simplest story. She'd run, left in the night with a man she loved and couldn't have, and left the pillows behind so we wouldn't chase her too hard, too fast. It was almost a kind way of losing her. Then Detective Renner found the tapes. Not in the sergeant's apartment, in ours. Behind the water heater, wrapped in a garbage bag, a handheld recorder aimed through a gap in the vent that opened straight into my mother's bedroom. Hours of it, weeks of it, time-stamped back to spring. Nobody could explain how someone got into a locked house to plant it, or how none of us, not her, not me, not the dog who barked at strangers, ever noticed a stranger in our home long enough to hide a camera behind a wall. The timestamps didn't stop the night she vanished. They continued for 6 more days. 6 days of an empty, undisturbed room recording nothing. On the 7th day, the tape simply ended. Not damaged, not full. Ended, the way a sentence ends when someone decides not to finish it. Renner played me 11 seconds from 2 nights before she disappeared. My mother, alone, sitting up in bed at 3 in the morning. Very still, looking directly at the vent, like she already knew. I have never been able to explain that part to anyone. Not the tapes, not the way she looked into a wall, like she could see the eye behind it. Not why, of everyone in that house, she was the only one who ever seemed to sense it was there. Some questions the case file answered. That one nobody ever tried to. For a while, the elopement story held. It was easier than the alternative, and easy stories get believed the longest. Then a neighbor of my father's called the sheriff's office about a fire. Not a small one. A controlled burn, she said, except my father didn't run cattle that needed a burn pit cleared in December, and he'd never once, in 11 years of living next to that ranch, lit one after dark. She remembered the night specifically because the smoke smelled wrong, not wood, not brush. Rena drove out there herself, 3 weeks later, with a warrant and a forensic team that dug through frozen ash with hand trowels because the machines couldn't get traction on the ice. A shoe buckle first, then a filling, then enough of the rest. Enough to end the elopement story for good. I wasn't in the room when they told my father what they'd found. I've only ever had the version everyone got. How the color left his face before he said a single word. How his first sentence wasn't a denial. It was a question. He asked what they found before they told him. Nobody explains their innocence that way. What came out afterward, slowly in pieces, meant to be gentler than they were. He'd been in the house that night. Chloroform, the state chemist confirmed, from a rag matched to solvent in his own barn. He'd folded the pillows himself. Of course the angle was right. He'd watched her sleep like that for 9 years of marriage. He'd taken her keys, her coat, driven her car to the airport himself, then walked the back roads home before dawn, timing it against a shift schedule he used to work. He wanted it to look like she'd left us, like the sergeant had finally offered her the exit she wanted. The ranch was the last 20 minutes of her life. I have never asked for more detail than that, and no one has ever offered it twice. What none of it explained, what still doesn't sit right all these years later, is the tape. He didn't own a recorder. He'd never set foot in our house since the divorce. The locks had been changed the same week he moved out. Someone else put that camera behind our wall. Nobody ever found out who. He's been in prison longer now than he was ever my father. Life, without the possibility of anything softer than that word. For years I told myself the case closed the day the file did. A jealous man, a pillow, a pit. Ugly but finite. Then last spring I went back to sell the house. 20-some years empty, waiting on paperwork nobody had bothered to finish. The water heater had been replaced twice since. The vent into what used to be her room was gone, drywalled flat during some renovation in the 90s. I only knew where it had been because I still remembered the angle you had to stand at to see the gap. I stood there anyway, the old habit. Behind the new drywall, the contractor found something the second week, sealed in the wall cavity itself, further back than the old vent line had ever reached. Another recorder, newer model, different make than the one Rena pulled out decades ago. Still running, not recording. The battery had died years before anyone found it, but the internal clock had kept ticking off some backup cell nobody thought to replace. When they finally opened the casing, the last stored timestamp on the drive read 6 days after they arrested my father. 6 days after he was already in a cell 40 miles away. I don't have an explanation for that. Nobody who's looked at it does either. The contractor didn't know what he'd found besides an old piece of junk. The detective who could have made sense of it retired years ago, unreachable, uninterested in reopening a case that already had a name attached to its ending. I thought about the sergeant, the one who failed a polygraph and was still, on paper, cleared of everything. Nobody had asked him about vents or old houses in 20 years. I worked up the nerve to call him once. He'd remarried, moved twice, and didn't call back. I sold the house anyway. I had the wall repaired before closing. Some nights, though, I think about the angle she was looking at. That one clip Rena played me when I was 12. My mother sitting up at 3 in the morning, staring into a gap in a wall, like she already knew something was on the other side of it. I used to think she was looking at my father. I'm not sure anymore whose eye she was looking for.